Jim, the alleged hitman, says Yuri Jenkins agreed to pay him $20,000 to kill Jenkins' wife. He says he got $10,000 from Jenkins before the fatal shooting, and he was supposed to get the remaining $10,000 after the killing.
You went there with one mission, didn't you?
Yes, ma'am.
And that mission was to kill Makeva.
Yes, ma'am.
Levon Joseph says he needed money and so he agreed to murder Makeva Jenkins because her husband Yuri Jenkins wanted her dead. He says Yuri Jenkins was there that night at their house and showed him where his wife Makeva was in her room asleep.
I just remember him motioning for me to go in the room that the door was cracked.
Joseph, wearing a mask, says he entered her darkened bedroom and saw a person in the bed which he assumed was Makeva.
So I was a couple feet away. I aimed the gun at her head and I shot her.
And where did you shoot her?
In the head.
They always fuck with that.
Was she lying on her back or her side? Do you recall that?
Her side.
He says Makeva did not say a word or make any sound.
How many shots did you fire?
One.
Many niggas left. Until, where you funny now?
Now, why did you shoot her in the head?
Because I was trying to finish the job.
He says the defendant, Yuri Jenkins, knew that he had just shot Makeva.
What was the defendant doing?
No, man. Yes. Yes.
He tried to stop you?
No.
At one point during the testimony, Makeva Jenkins' grandmother ran to the courtroom crying. At another point, Makeva Jenkins' younger brother, Makeva Greer, who was about to testify for the prosecution, instead tried to get to Yuri Jenkins, who was seated at the defense table. Greer was extremely angry and shouting crude racial remarks. But before he could reach Jenkins, sheriff deputies grabbed him and took him out of the courtroom. After a brief recess, the jury returned to the courtroom, and the judge told them to disregard the outburst. After speaking with attorneys for both sides, the judge decided not to declare a mistrial.
That's what I'm saying. So where's this king of the comedy shit coming from?
Jenkins is facing a possible sentence of life in prison if he's convicted of first-degree murder. The case is expected to go to the jury by Friday. Live in West Palm Beach, Al Peffley, CBS 12 News.
Boy, that was part of it. That's what I thought.
The Florida night air was thick with silence. It was just past midnight on June 29, 2017, in a quiet suburb of Lake Worth, Florida. The world was asleep, the sky moonless. A low hum of cicadas buzzed in the distance, and in a modest house just off the main road, a mother of three was dreaming about the future. 33-year-old Makeva Jenkins had every reason to be hopeful. Just hours earlier, she'd posted a message on Facebook. A message millions would read, but only a few would truly understand. We overcame being homeless in 2013 to now making multi-six figures. Here's to manifesting a bigger 2017. It was more than a brag. It was a testimony. A moment of triumph carved from years of struggle, pain, and perseverance. But within hours of writing those words, she'd be gone. One bullet, fired point blank into her head. Her body slumped across the floor of her grandmother's home. Her children asleep in the next room. Her husband, the one man who should have protected her, was standing just steps away when the killer pulled the trigger. Was it a robbery gone wrong? Or something darker? Tonight, on Sinister Tales, we unravel the story of a woman who believed in second chances and a husband who believed he was owed a first-class exit. This is the murder of Makeva Jenkins, and the plot that tore her life and her legacy apart. Before the headlines, before the trial, before the betrayal, Makeva Jenkins was a story the world needed to hear. She was born and raised in Florida. Not with a silver spoon, but with grit. She knew what struggle felt like. In 2013, she and her children were homeless, sleeping in cars, couch hopping, fighting to stay afloat. But Makeva wasn't the type to give up. Instead, she became a walking case study in transformation. She launched her own business consulting company, the Prime Enterprise Group, offering tools and mentorship to other small businesses, especially single mothers like herself. She was magnetic, kind, bold. The type of woman who believed you could manifest anything if you worked for it. And by 2017, it was working. She had a booming social media presence, regular clients, and a steady stream of motivational posts that resonated with thousands. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was winning. So why would anyone want her dead? To the outside world, Makeva and her husband Yuri seemed like the perfect couple, a family trying to build something bigger than themselves. He wasn't flashy. He didn't post much. But when Makeva celebrated, he was usually in the background, arms crossed, silent. The two shared a blended family. They had children. They lived under one roof. And like any couple, they had arguments. But no one expected violence. Still, there were rumors. Friends described Yuri as moody private, sometimes controlling. While Makeva was all about exposure and community, Yuri stayed in the shadows. He rarely supported her business in public, rarely posted about her online. Behind closed doors, some say the marriage was rocky. Makeva had all the attention, all the success. And Yuri? He had access to her life insurance. 6 months before Makeva's death, Yuri Jenkins did something that, in hindsight, feels like a loaded gun placed on the table. He took out a life insurance policy on Makeva, worth $500,000. The only beneficiary? Yuri. To be clear, it's not illegal. Many couples take out insurance as a precaution. But something about the timing, something about the urgency would later raise red flags, especially when paired with what came next. Because Yuri wasn't the only man with a role to play in this story. June 28, 2017. Just one day before everything changed. Makeva and her family were staying at her grandmother's home in Lake Worth. The kids had school off. It was a chance to breathe, to spend time with family. She posted her viral message that night. Hopeful, grateful, alive. Sometime after midnight, Makeva's grandmother heard the front door open. She assumed it was Yuri letting someone in. Maybe a friend, maybe a cousin. The man was quiet, wore a mask, walked in like he knew the house. And just minutes later, a gunshot. Not a struggle, not a scream, just the sharp, unmistakable crack of a .40 caliber handgun. Makeva was found on the floor, shot in the head at close range. Her children were still asleep. Yuri was still inside the house. The intruder gone. No valuables taken. No ransacked drawers. No smashed windows. Whoever pulled the trigger had one mission, and one mission only. And they executed it perfectly. Yuri was frantic when police arrived. At least, he appeared to be. He told detectives the house was broken into. He had no idea who the shooter was. It was a robbery, he insisted. A senseless act. But something didn't sit right. How did the killer get in without force? Why didn't anyone hear yelling? Why didn't Yuri call 911 right away? And why was Makeva the only target? The killer walked right past the kids' bedrooms, past the living room, past her grandmother, straight to Makeva, almost like he knew exactly where she'd be. Detectives weren't convinced this was random, and soon, they started digging. What they found would lead them down a path of betrayal, family ties, and a murder for hire that had been planned for months. Makeva Jenkins believed she was manifesting a better future, but what she didn't know was that someone else was scripting her final chapter. Someone close. Someone with a key to the front door. Someone who had already counted the money. This is the story of how a woman's life was traded for a payout, and how a web of lies began to unravel, one burner phone, one text message, one betrayal at a time. When detectives began piecing together the events of June 29th, their first move was to examine who had access, who knew the layout, who had a motive. That's when suspicion fell squarely on Yuri Jenkins. There were inconsistencies in his story. According to police, he hesitated when giving key details. His timeline was vague. He claimed the shooter was a stranger, yet he didn't describe what the man looked like. Not his height, not his build. Nothing. Officers noticed something else. For someone who had just lost his wife, Yuri's demeanor was off, flat, composed, strangely unaffected. He never asked to see her body, never demanded justice, never broke down in anguish. And when investigators asked him if anyone might want to hurt Makeva, he had no real answer. But someone did. A tip came in less than 48 hours after the murder. A man named Dame Tridale had been talking, bragging, even. He wasn't shy about the fact that he knew what happened to Makeva Jenkins. Word spread through the streets like smoke, eventually reaching the ears of detectives. They pulled Dame Tri in for questioning, and what he said turned the case upside
That mission
down.
was to kill Makeva.
Yes, ma'am.
Levon Joseph says he needed money and so he agreed to murder.
Dame Tri wasn't just connected to the shooter. He recruited him. And the man behind it all? Dame Tri pointed the finger squarely at Yuri Jenkins. Let's talk about the man who pulled the trigger, Jovan Joseph. Not a career killer, not a mob enforcer, just a 20-year-old with no job, a criminal record, and a desire for fast money. According to investigators, Yuri Jenkins had approached Dame Tri weeks before the murder, offering cash if he could handle a situation. That situation was Makeva. Dame Tri told detectives he didn't want to do the job himself. Instead, he reached out to Jovan, someone he knew would say yes for the right price. That price? Just $7,000. That's how much Makeva's life was worth to them. $7,000. Dame Tri gave investigators the key to cracking the case: cell phone records, texts, calls, directions, coordinated drop-offs. Detectives subpoenaed phone logs, and what they found proved the murder was premeditated. In the days leading up to the killing, Yuri had been in constant communication with Dame Tri, and Dame Tri with Jovan. They spoke in coded phrases, met in parking lots, used burner phones to avoid detection. But as we know, criminals rarely cover their tracks perfectly. Jovan's phone pinged near Makeva's grandmother's house the night of the murder. That placed him at the scene. And when questioned, his story fell apart fast. Faced with mounting evidence, texts, phone records, surveillance footage, and now a direct statement from Dame Tri, Jovan cracked. He confessed. He told detectives that he was hired to kill Makeva Jenkins, that Yuri Jenkins orchestrated the entire hit, that he was paid to walk into a home in the middle of the night and pull the trigger. But even worse, Jovan claimed Yuri opened the door for him, that he walked past the family, through the hallway, and into the room where Makeva slept because he'd been given the exact layout of the home. It was a surgical hit, not a robbery, not an accident, a cold, calculated execution. With the confession in hand, police dug deeper into Yuri's motive. They confirmed what many had suspected. Yuri Jenkins was the sole beneficiary of a $500,000 life insurance policy on Makeva's life, taken out just 6 months before her death. It wasn't even her idea. Yuri had initiated the process. He paid the premiums. He made sure his name was the only one on the payout. The deeper they went, the uglier it got. Yuri had told people in private that he resented Makeva's success, that he felt emasculated, that she was moving on without him. But what he didn't say out loud was that he was also in debt, behind on bills, desperate for cash. And now, with his wife gone, a payday was just a few signatures away. On September 1st, 2017, just 2 months after Makeva's death, Yuri Jenkins was arrested for first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. He was denied bond. Jovan Joseph was arrested for first-degree murder. And Dame Tri Dale? Charged with solicitation of murder and conspiracy. 3 men, 1 plan, and a mountain of evidence built on texts, insurance documents, and a broken chain of loyalty. But what's perhaps most chilling is that Yuri showed no remorse. Even after the arrests, even after the confessions, he maintained his innocence. But the evidence? It spoke louder than any denial. The air in the Palm Beach County courtroom was suffocating, not because of the Florida heat outside, but because of what hung in the air inside. Tension. On one side sat Makeva Jenkins' family, still shattered, still reeling, still holding on to the only thing left, the truth. On the other sat the man accused of orchestrating her murder, her husband, Yuri Jenkins. He was calm, cold, watching everything unfold like it had nothing to do with him. But everyone knew it had everything to do with him. This was the moment when a mother, daughter, and visionary entrepreneur would finally have her story heard. But what the court didn't expect was how far Yuri would go to keep his secrets buried. Despite the mountain of evidence, cell phone records, text messages, insurance policies, and a confession from the gunman, Yuri's defense team stuck to one thing: denial. They argued that there was no physical evidence placing Yuri directly at the scene, that no murder weapon had been found in his possession, that the killer, Jove and Joseph had cut a deal to save himself. They wanted the jury to believe this was all circumstantial, that Yuri was just a grieving husband, caught in a nightmare he didn't create. But the prosecution? They didn't buy it for a second. They brought in phone experts to map out the cell towers. They showed text exchanges between Yuri, Dametry, and Jovan. They laid out the timeline of planning, the insurance documents, and most damning of all, the statements from Dametry Dale. Dametry had been charged with conspiracy and solicitation, but he made a deal. A full cooperation agreement in exchange for a reduced sentence. And when he took the stand, he didn't hold back. He told the court that Yuri Jenkins wanted his wife dead, that he approached him about the plan, that he offered money to get it done, that he met with Jove and Joseph multiple times to line up the murder. The courtroom went still. Makeva's family broke down in tears. Dametry's testimony was graphic, detailed, and, according to prosecutors, rock solid. But there was one twist even the prosecution didn't see coming. Just when the case seemed airtight, the first trial collapsed. In December 2019, the jury deliberated for 3 days. They couldn't reach a unanimous decision. A hung jury was declared, a mistrial. The Jenkins family had to relive their nightmare all over again. But the prosecutors weren't done. They reloaded, refiled, and returned to court in 2022, this time with sharper angles, better framing, and a clear message. This was a cold-blooded hit, paid for by the man she trusted most. In September 2022, 5 years after Makeva's death, the second trial began. This time, jurors heard from a new prosecution witness, a woman who had been in a romantic relationship with Yuri after Makeva's death. She told the jury that Yuri had confessed parts of the murder plan to her in private, that he admitted to arranging the hit, that he spoke of Makeva in the past tense with zero remorse. It was the final nail. And when the closing arguments wrapped, the courtroom held its breath. The jury returned after hours of deliberation. Guilty on all counts. First-degree murder. Conspiracy to commit murder. The silence broke. Makeva's family wept. Yuri Jenkins showed no emotion. He stared ahead, expressionless, as if none of it applied to him. But the justice system saw through it. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Jovan Joseph, the trigger man, was also sentenced to life. Dametry Dale, for his cooperation, received 15 years. 3 men, 3 paths, 1 woman gone forever. Makeva's legacy didn't die with her. Her children, now motherless, are being raised by extended family. Her consulting business was shut down, but the impact she had on the lives she touched still echoes online. People still share her last Facebook post. Her journey from homelessness to entrepreneurship remains a symbol of hope, even if her ending was tragic. But what haunts most people isn't how she died. It's who killed her. Not a stranger, not a random robber, but her husband, a man who slept beside her, ate with her, prayed with her, who looked her in the eye while planning her execution. At sentencing, Makeva's brother took the stand. He told the court how she used to light up every room, how she could hustle, cry, and still give her last dollar to a stranger, how her biggest goal wasn't wealth, but freedom. And in his words, one line hit hardest. You didn't just kill my sister, you killed a dream. To this day, people believe Makeva's spirit still walks with the women she inspired, in every broken woman rebuilding her life, in every single mom chasing a vision, in every voice that refuses to be silenced. Because evil can end a life, but it can't kill a legacy. If this story struck a chord, don't forget to like, share, or subscribe. Because these stories aren't just cautionary tales. They're warnings. Sometimes the monster isn't hiding in the shadows. Sometimes he's sleeping right beside you. This has been Sinister Tales. Until next time, stay safe and stay awake.